in, everybody. How is everyone doing? My name is Jason Lyon, Mr. Murica, the Bearded Truth. Thank you guys all for being here tonight. Now, tonight's show, we got quite a bit filled out for us. We are ready to rock and roll. Quite a bit of stuff going on out there in the world. But first, I got to give you the thanks. So thank you to everyone who's joined in tonight and everyone who is watching this in the after effects. Whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or on Periscope, I want to thank you for catching it live. Drop your comments and questions below, and we will address them as we receive them. But if you're catching us live or catching us after the fact on the podcast, thank you for tuning in there. Of course, you can always find us on Anchor FM. That is where you can provide us the most support. Big shout out and big thank you to Muddied Waters Media for giving me this platform to reach out to you to talk about my opinions, my stances, my principles on everything that's going on. As I said, my name is Mr. Murica, the Bearded Truth. If this is your first time here, I am your neighborhood-friendly libertarian, talking about politics and social issues that go on around the world, and bring it back to you, the individual. So thank you guys all for being here tonight. I am excited. We have a lot to get through. Some smaller stuff, some bigger stuff, but nonetheless, all stuff worthy of our time and our efforts. So I will be opening up the call-in line as well. For those of you who are tuned in live, you can call in at any time with your comments, your questions, topics that you want to talk about, whatever it is. Feel free to do so. But in the interim, I want to get started on what's going on with R. Kelly. Well, 13-count indictment has handed down yesterday, Thursday, in Northern District of Illinois. There's charges of child pornography, enticement of a minor, and obstruction of justice. So R. Kelly, he really had the limelight a couple months back, and people remembered that this was the man who was peeing on girls, peeing on little 14-year-old girls. Now, of course, Muddy Waters tradition. We do not condone rape. We don't condone killing. We don't condone terrorism. Yada yada yada. That we don't condone these in 100% seriousness. And R. Kelly has been doing this, and people kind of swept it under the rug for a while. Came back up a couple months ago, and now we're back at it again. He's been arrested in Chicago Thursday night. So we're now this 52-year-old man is in trouble for having sexual relations with girls that are under 18, children. His manager, his security, and other people were grooming, grabbing, and kind of putting them into the position for the man. And so the indictment, the arrest has been made. Man's being indicted on this stuff, and I think it's fully justifiable. So R. Kelly made the news this week, and then of course the Jeffrey Epstein. He is that situation is. I would say that his situation is, from what I've seen of the two, is much worse. He had, over the course of what's been proven so far, has been 79 girls. 79 girls have been permanently affected by this man because of his grotesque behaviors. And, there really is no justification for what he did. And there's no justification for the light sentencing that he received before. But this one that's coming up, certainly, it really does make your gut wrench. I don't think that there's really any way to spin this other than the fact that anyone who was involved needs to be held accountable. I don't care. Republican, Democrat, whoever, whatever. You're deserving. You are deserving. This is something that shouldn't be debated in any way. It should just be accepted, regardless of what party you're a part of, regardless of who you idolize. Just completely unacceptable. So Jeffrey Epstein, wow. We're still in the Me Too movement, but Jeffrey Epstein going in, that's the right decision. He's now trying to work out another plea deal by basically giving away a bunch of other people's information to get more people indicted and brought in on charges. And as what he's requesting, what he desires, if he's going to give up this information, is he'll have a maximum of 5 year sentencing. This shows that the guy's not sorry about it. He's already been labeled a level 3 sex offender, which means that he's very likely to repeat, and certainly he has since the time of getting out of his 16-hour freedom days in the cell. That's right, 8 hours. And so now he's just trying to push an even lighter sentence. Now, can we do the 3-strike rule with this guy? Like, can we do the 3-strike rule? You do it on your third one, we're going to castrate you. And I'm not saying, like, even in a humane way. I'm talking, just get the branding iron and just brand straight through it. Let's castrate this guy if he gets onto his third charges. And of course, if he does give this information, that's the way that it would go. But it also raises another question, another concern for me. And that is that if you don't incriminate other people, you're not going, or you're going to have longer charges. He's probably going to face life in prison, the remainder of his days, rotting in those cells. So he can keep his secrets and he can suffer by himself, or our justice system will give him a nice, cozy place to live after 5 years if he rats out more people. Now, I don't know which way I would prefer on that, right? All these people need to be torn apart and taken down. But I'm wondering if, I don't know how we could set it up without having a double jeopardy situation where after those 5 years, we go after him for other charges. I'm not normally an advocate of using the state in this way, of using the justice system, without regard of, protecting against double jeopardy and all that. But I think that when you have something as grotesque and as inhumane as what he was doing, it's almost warranted. And I feel disgusting saying that. I really do. Just because I've read all of the things. 79 girls. 79 girls. I don't even think we need to get to the third strike. But so R. Kelly and Jeffrey Epstein making horrible news. Good news that they're being imprisoned. Well, right now we're waiting on the actual charges and to actually lock him up. But it's good that they're both going away. So I'm thankful for that. Nice little bit of humor. JP Morgan, a couple years ago, back in 2014, says JP Morgan publicly denounces Bitcoin as currencies for criminals. The banking boss believes the popular digital currency is increasingly being used by criminals such as drug dealers. Now, this year, 3 days ago, U.S. Customs seized $1.3 billion worth of cocaine on a ship owned by JP Morgan. So if we're going to talk about criminals and doing things, crimes should not be victimless, right? But in our society right now, the banks who act in a criminal way, oftentimes, I would say, they are specifically the one that's talking about currency for criminals uses the US dollars, which is another currency for criminals, in order to move $1.3 billion worth of drugs. Man. Such a shame. Such a shame. It's in the war on drugs. I think we've covered that plenty of times. But this $1.3 billion worth of cocaine was the largest cocaine seizure ever carried out by the CBP. It's bad when you're Border Patrol. That's like their big thing. Ooh, cut those drugs, yo. Cut those drugs, man. You guys want to do some lines with me? Because we just found a bunch of drugs. Now we're going to hand it over to the CIA and not expect it to go get spread around in the ghettos. Don't worry, it won't. We can trust the government. We are the government. Yeah. So it's a pretty big find. Pretty big find. I don't know. I always find it funny whenever you see people and it's like they make a tweet, and oftentimes these are always Donald Trump tweets that we're always reflecting on, where Trump is like, you can't go after Syria without congressional approval, Obama. And then he comes in, he's like, 59 tomahawks? That's not, yeah, that'll be fine. It's always good to be able to find people who just openly contradict themselves. Now I want to get into the main story of what we had for tonight. And by main story, I mean there are a couple stories that we are going to be piecing together involving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, involving Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump, and Paul Ryan. How do we get these four people together? Well, it's going to be a lot simpler than it sounds. So I want to start off with Nancy Pelosi has been the establishment Democrat. She's been this for a while. And after the 2018 elections, we've been genuinely concerned with the idea that this blue wave that came through, there were a lot of Democratic socialists, if you will, that got elected. And then there was still establishment Democrats. And we knew that kind of having a loudmouth, kind of having an airhead such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being in there, and her being kind of the thought leader. I don't know if we can really refer to them as thoughts. I think we need to apologize for thoughts for that. But with her being a thought leader and Nancy Pelosi being Speaker of the House, kind of expected that this would be a bit of an issue for them. This would be a big driving factor in the divide that's been going on. Now, Nancy Pelosi has been having to go after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and a couple other freshmen who happen to be people of color, because they've been pushing for radical things. They've been pushing their values instead of pushing the party, and trying to steer it away from the way that Nancy Pelosi wants it, speaking about the House only. And so when you have one person pulling and you got one person pulling on the other side, of course, what you're left with is a big, giant bloodbath. So Nancy Pelosi has been having to go be extremely critical of what these freshman Congress ladies are doing. And as a result, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is getting frustrated, and so she drops the bomb. She says that potentially Nancy Pelosi is doing this. Well, she doesn't say potentially. Nancy Pelosi is going after the freshman people of color, going after the freshmen because they're people of color. She's just trying to be oppressive. She's just that old white lady that's just like all the other white men in this country that just hate the people of color, and she's always looking to push them down. When Alexandria was asked about this, she said, when these comments first started talking about Nancy Pelosi's comments, I kind of thought she was keeping the progressive flank more at an arm's distance in order to protect more moderate members, which I understood. But the persistent singling out, it got to a point where it was just outright disrespectful. The explicit singling out of newly elected women of color. Ooh, she's going after the women of color, guys. It's really just pointing out the pattern, right? We're not talking about just progressives. It's singling out four individuals. And knowing the media environment that we're operating in, knowing the amount of death threats that we get, knowing the amount of concentration detention, I think it's just worth asking why. I like how, knowing the amount of concentration detention, she was just like, how can I get immigration into this? She wanted to get people fired up. And so even when going after Nancy Pelosi, you have to go after the immigration situation. This is a skill done by most activists, right? You want to bring it back to a big stand that you're taking right now, even if it's not entirely attached. Nancy Pelosi obviously is not doing enough in Congress because there's still concentration detention down along our southern border. So AOC is pushing that, and she's pushing that activism at the same time of going after Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, when asked, she said, asked if she thinks Pelosi has racial animus or racist. She said, no, absolutely not, absolutely not. So AOC says that no, but she's pushing the same agenda at the same time, because as we've seen from the media is always out there to make sure that they take quotes, they take the big accusations, the inferences that are being made, they take those and they throw those out. They throw those snippets out, but they don't actually cover what the true message was. So she's just saying basically, look, I have to relate to people that I'm a person of color and she's pushing me away. And so what she's doing here is she's trying to drive also another racial division, right? Nancy Pelosi cannot be the Speaker of the House because she wants to hold down the Democratic people of color in some way, right? You get that inference, you get that put into your own brain just by what she's saying. So what we have here is a failure to communicate. No, what we have here is AOC really trying to strike at power, right? She's got to go after the power. She's got to go after the top. She's got to go after Nancy Pelosi because 2020 is coming around. Right now, the campaigns are starting to get People are starting to get out there. You've got the campaigns really going full swing. Everyone's kind of structured. FECs, everyone's filed in for the FEC for the most part, and we are green light out there. So Nancy Pelosi and AOC representing two different Democratic groups, two Democratic parties. She's working right now as trying to get the grassroots activism out there, pushing for that racial change, pushing for more democratic socialists, pushing for more people that are going to oppose Nancy Pelosi. She's trying to use Nancy Pelosi as a lightning rod in the same way that Trump has been the lightning rod for Republicans, whether it's for or against. All AOC is doing here is trying to use the division. She's trying to use this in her favor by making inferences and then later kind of pulling back on them. So Nancy Pelosi was being defended by Trump. Trump comes out and says, hey, she's not a racist. I was shocked that he did this. I was absolutely shocked. I was floored at the idea that President Trump was going to come out here and defend Nancy Pelosi and her character on that. He did it. I honestly, props to him for that. But he went after Paul Ryan, though. When he went after Paul Ryan, and we got another story covering Nancy Pelosi and Trump later, so don't worry, we'll stay on them. But Trump unloads on Paul Ryan after Paul Ryan's book gets dropped. That's right. It's not just the Democrats. It's not just Jim Comey that are trying to use Trump as Trump making hit pieces involving Trump at the ability to make more book sales, right? They're all trying to make money off of Trump, and if you can't make the money by working with Trump, you got to make the money by going away from Trump. So President Donald Trump, after he wrote after the book was released, American Carnage, Donald Trump laid into former Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan as a baby and a terrible speaker on Friday after the former congressman was quoted in a new book saying that the president didn't know anything about governing and that he retired to get away from him. Can we honestly, I think that Paul Ryan may have had some truth behind that, right? When you come in and you've been a business mogul, you've been a TV star, you've been a family man, you've been everything that you've been, and you've never held a political office, it would not be ridiculous to believe that somebody getting into that position for the first time may not know that much, right? Trump knows how to get ratings. Trump knows how to get people to listen to him. Trump knows a lot of ways of getting the engagement and the involvement from people, right? That's what he did with his real estate. That's what he did with his businesses. That's what he did on TV. And so he got elected. But that doesn't mean that he knows much about our constitutional republic. Him retiring to get away from him, Ryan retiring to get away from Trump, yeah, that's plausible. That's probably likely. But it just shows that first part of the statement. That's the thing that really hurts Trump. That hurts Trump deep into his belly. And I can understand why, but at the same time, having a little humility about it, you can be like, whatever. This guy's trying to talk trash. If I build him up, if I make this a big scene, more people are going to see it. The anti-Trump mob is going to jump full bore onto this. They're going to be tweeting it out. They're going to be buying the books. They're going to be reading the books because it's anti-Trump. If you want to help out your opponents, keep the fight going. Keep the argument going. If you don't, let it go. But of course, we just had the Trump blocking people on Twitter story come back from the courts, right? Where Trump can't ban people from his @RealDonaldTrump account. Why can't he? Because it's an infringement of the First Amendment. Now everyone goes, real quick on that. Everyone thinks that it's because people are being silenced, right? They have a freedom to speak and do all these things. It's actually a little more in depth than that. The way that this court was ruled, the way that this case was ruled, was that because Donald Trump, when he first was elected, he made the @RealDonaldTrump Twitter account his official platform to reach the people. That was his official platform. And so as soon as you make that your official platform and you utilize it for business purposes as the president of the United States or as an elected person, that then becomes a platform for people to be able to redress their grievances as well, right? One of those pesky lines in the First Amendment. They also have to be able to hear what the president is saying, right? You can't block people from being able to hear what he's saying. So on those two grounds, Donald Trump can't block people. So if Donald Trump could, instead of fighting back on every little thing, let some of the things slide, let more of the things slide, he may be able to get his opponents to be downplayed all on their own. But instead, he gives them the fire. He gives them the publicity, the notoriety. And it's things like that really hurt him in the long run. Because now more people hear about Paul Ryan and what he wrote. Now more people have to talk about it. Now I have to talk about why it is that, how he got elected and how he reached out to the people, and he may not have known much about our constitutional republic. He almost fuels his own fires against himself. He almost does. While we're talking about the Supreme Court and those opinions that they give, we have another story. And this was also brought up by personal lawyer or personal injury lawyer, Chris Reynolds. Chris Reynolds, attorney at law, has got a wonderful question for us.
The Supreme Court.
Here we go.
Personal injury attorney Chris Reynolds here with your Susan Collins Corner. The Supreme Court, I believe, has decided to take up the Affordable Care Act again for a second time. The constitutionality of the individual mandate was litigated previously. It was upheld. I guess they were, a court in Texas, I believe, has taken it up again. Also having to do with the individual mandate and with the issue of severability, whether or not they can just take that out. And I wanted to see the guys' thoughts on that, on how that might play in with the Medicare for All thing that most of the Democrats are talking about, and what they think the future might hold for healthcare in the United States. Thank you.
Thanks for the wonderful question, Chris Reynolds, attorney at law. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate it. So, as Chris was asking, the courts are addressing an opinion given back in Texas last year. I believe it was in December of last year, where the individual mandate, because it was removed from the Tax Cuts and Job Act, the big tax cuts that were given by Trump and Congress, the individual mandate was slipped in there. And by slipped in there, it was removing it from the rest of the legislation. It removed it from the Affordable Care Act legislation, which meant that they were removing that portion of the funding. Now, what the individual mandate did, if you guys don't remember, was if you did not have health insurance, if you could not afford health insurance, if you didn't want health insurance, if for whatever reason you could do everything on your own and you didn't need health insurance and you didn't have it, you would be fined for every month of the year that you didn't have it. Now, that was a big revenue scheme. That was to try to push people onto the Affordable Care Act to get the quote-unquote universal coverage. Many people didn't. So it was a big, giant revenue scheme in order to help fund the rest of the Affordable Care Act. This was it was a major, major, major portion of how much money was coming in to make sure that that system kept going. And so when this Texas judge made his ruling, basically the lawsuit and the way that it was litigated was that they said it was inseverable. So if you remove that portion of the individual mandate, if you of the Affordable Care Act, you remove the individual mandate, then there would not be enough money for the system to go on. And so that was the term that Chris Reynolds had used, the inseverability. If something is inseverable and you take it away by law, then that entire piece of legislation can be removed. So not only that, but also the same judge and the same ruling said even if the individual mandate remains, it would be unconstitutional. There's nothing there in the Constitution delegating authority to the federal government in order to control or provide health care at a tax, right? At the cost of a tax. There's nothing there to allow that. And so he said even if it was not inseverable, right? Even if they didn't take it away, that ruling that he had, it doesn't matter with or without the individual mandate, the healthcare system would not be able to continue on. It would not have enough funding. So fantastic point from him on that. Now, what does this mean for the future? Well, of course, what we saw when this got brought back up and the Republican panel, as they've been labeled, of the appeal judges have already leaned towards the idea of agreeing with the Texas judge on this. Democrats have started up the political storm. So Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer both come out and they get in front of the media. They get in front of Fox, CNN, MSNBC, C-SPAN, everybody. And they hold a little rally and they hold up signs of children across this country and they say, these children are going to die if we don't have Affordable Care Act. If we don't have Affordable Care Act, all these children will die. And it's President Trump and the Republicans who want to remove things like pre-existing condition. And so they continue on and they make this about how Democrats care about your life, they care about your health care, and by them caring, Republicans obviously do not. Quick fact check on that stuff. Republicans and President Trump all would like the pre-existing condition to remain. I wouldn't say all Republicans. Many of the Republicans would like pre-existing conditions to remain, despite the fact that a lot of people who work in, if you work for a business, you're employed by somebody else. Oftentimes you get put into a pool of people. And so all of you guys are paying in your health insurance money each month or every paycheck or whatever. All of that money goes towards everybody within that group. So as a result, nobody looks for the pre-existing condition. So if you work for an employer, you have that. Now, one of the byproducts of the Affordable Care Act was individual plans got removed. So if you were not working, or if you don't work for somebody else, you work by yourself, for yourself, you set your schedule, you set your work. In a couple states, they've lost every single one of the companies that were providing individual coverage plans. So you either have to work for somebody else, you could still get Affordable Care Act until it gets removed, or you have to live without. Now, because of the way our system is, because of our healthcare, because of our government and all the red tape and laws and everything else that they have, it's extremely expensive. They don't allow trade here. They require certificate of need there. There's just a whole lot of fraud, waste, and abuse when it comes to our healthcare system. And it's all been protected and emboldened by our wonderful legislators, whether on the state level or on the federal level. So the Republicans want to have pre-existing conditions, even though most people it doesn't affect you. Even though most people it doesn't affect you. They will stand on these children's, some living, some dead bodies, and tell you that the Republicans don't care about you. I am somebody who cares about the children. I am somebody who cares about the adults. I'm somebody who cares about every single life that is here in America. And I will tell you that Affordable Care Act does not make us a better country. Affordable Care Act, universal health care, Medicare for all. These are all systems that will not make our healthcare system better. It will not help us to make sure that we're going to continue doing research and development to make sure that we're staying up on advancements and being able to provide that to other countries that have been sucked into those nets, into the universal healthcare nets. If we just all accept that government is going to control the research and development, the healthcare, and everything else, we will end up just like Venezuela's oil rigs, washed up, not working, and nobody there to provide. I'm not excited about that. I'm not excited about making life worse in the future or even maintaining what we have now. I'm all about emboldening this. I'm all about just advancing as quickly and as best we can within the research and development. I want us to be able to cure cancer. I want us to cure AIDS. I want us to cure all of these things that right now we don't feel as if they're curable. Eventually we can find that. And that's only by unleashing the research and development. I want us to have cheaper healthcare. I want us to have higher quality healthcare. That means that we have to have more competition. That's why certificate of need in the 36 states that it's still enacted in have to have that removed. We have to be able to trade across state lines and allow for more competitors. We have to allow this stuff. And so removing the Affordable Care Act is just one small piece of the giant puzzle. Get rid of them all. Let's unleash the market and allow for more businesses to try to provide the same service, and you will see quality go up and costs go down. Economic proof. It's just an economic truth. That's all that it is. That's all that it is. And Democrats right now, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, standing there and putting on this theater. It's just nonsensical. That's all that it is. They know that their buddies in the 2020 race are fighting for a bigger, stronger government-ran healthcare. They know that everybody there on the debate stage has been, I'm in favor of Medicare for all. I'm in favor of putting Medicare for all. I'm in favor of forcing Medicare for all for everyone. I'm in favor of voluntarily having Medicare for all. But all of these things, it wouldn't change the fact that everybody would have to pay in for it. Everybody would have to pay in for it. Now, if you don't have the full populace on, the cost remains pretty low. And so that incentivizes more people to get on. So that's that incremental stage. The other ones, like Bernie Sanders, who want to just full on implement it, ban private healthcare and everything else, will probably end up like Cuba or Venezuela and not have enough doctors for everyone who needs to be seen. We'll have rationing. We will have things like what happened to Vincent Lambert over there in France. He was starved to death. He was a French nurse. Vincent Lambert has died 9 days after being denied nutrition and hydration in a hospital. When you allow for the government to control your healthcare, they're not just controlling it in the way that they want to give you as much healthcare as you want. They're not going to give you as much healthcare as you need. They're going to give you healthcare based on if they can afford it or not. If there's a good chance that, things are going to turn around. And I have to say, it's not up to the government's choice whether I should be seen or not. If I can provide the service, or if I can provide enough, if others can provide enough, if I can create a GoFundMe, if I have a church, if I have a city, if I have people, if I have doctors that want to do it pro bono, if I have donations, if I have any way that I'm funding these things, it shouldn't be up to the government to say, we're not going to provide you anymore, and to allow me to starve to death or to become so dehydrated that I pass away. It is truly gruesome to watch things like this, or, the situation from Charlie Gard these are things that you have to see. If you're advocating for full government control, these are things that you have no choice in. You didn't make some decision where you say, I don't want to be treated. You got denied that ability, right? You were denied the process or the opportunity in order to preserve your own life. Now, if the government is to be as big as it is, if the government is to exist, the only thing that a government should be doing is protecting life. And under those terms, you could justify a government spending its money. Now, I disagree with that notion, but I don't think that the government's role is to ever step in the way and prevent you from being able to have your victuals given to you and thereby sentencing you to death. Truly, truly disgusting stuff going on out there. We got to bring back up Saudi Arabia. We got to talk about Saudi Arabia real quick. Because Saudi Arabia is that situation that until we're out of it, I'm going to keep talking to you guys about the wonderfully horrific, disgusting thing of Yemen. Ted Cruz made some news Wednesday night. Ted Cruz tells the Trump administration to follow the damn law on foreign arms sales. He had a simple message for Trump. Follow the damn law. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have been critical of administration's decisions to declare an emergency this year in order to expedite billions of dollars in arms sales to various countries, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE. But Cruz's particularly blunt warning about efforts to bypass Congress stands out due to his reputation as polarizing figure on Capitol Hill. Cruz says he supports the administration's underlying reason for selling arms to regional partners, and he voted against a joint resolution disapproving of the proposed sales in late June. However, on Wednesday, he issued a scathing rebuke of how the situation was handled while grilling Assistant Secretary of State, Political Military Affairs Clark Cooper during the Senate Foreign Relations hearing. I voted with the administration on the substance because of the threat of Iran, but I'll tell you from my end, if the administration does it again and there is not a live and exigent emergency, you will not have my vote, and I predict you will not have the vote of a number of other Republicans as well. The simpler process is to follow the damn law and respect it. It is beautiful to see Ted Cruz take a stand on this. I wish that he had in the past. I wish that he would more often against Trump, and we'll see in the future if he does. But this is the right answer, right? Congress is the one that makes these deals, not the President of the United States, as said by the Constitution. And so when Trump makes these deals, now Cruz agrees with him. I disagree vehemently with the idea that we're supposed to support terrorism, that we're supposed to support a genocide. A lot of people focus on the Khashoggi event, where the Saudi prince has been basically proven to be a part of shredding apart the journalist Khashoggi, and a lot of people got focused on that. And so they basically easily strawmanned that entire situation in order to say, yeah, maybe Saudi Arabia could utilize more armaments, use more missiles, use more weaponry. But the thing is that those weapons are being used in Yemen to continue the crisis there. The humanitarian aid is being blocked off. Schools, hospitals, retirement homes, not retirement homes. So schools, hospitals, weddings, there we go, and funerals. They're all being bombed over there with our missiles, with our armaments, just being sold to those Saudis. But it's nice to see Cruz take a stand. I wish that he would take the actual stance of being anti-war. I wish that he would support our troops by bringing them home. I wish that he would value the lives in which way he says that he is pro-life. But we have to just accept that he is now standing up, at least against Trump in some way. Of course, it's kind of weird. The couple weeks after Justin Amash has denounced or has left the party, that now we have a couple more Republicans stepping up and saying something to Trump. I'm wondering if there are wakes in the water from Justin Amash leaving. Those ripples coming through and maybe putting giving a little more structure to the spines of others. We'll see if that holds true. But it's a time right now where when you have the election next year for the second term for the president, that if you come out and you criticize Trump right now, there's much more impact there than it would be, say, last year or the year before, right? Just after an election, you can criticize somebody all you want to, but if you criticize them just before an election, within the year before an election, that's when it's going to have the biggest impact. That's when you're going to have the biggest changes. And so we will see if there's a continuation of that, how that goes through. But yeah, I'm happy with Ted Cruz taking a stand on that. This was something that was said by Joe Biden, going back to the Affordable Care Act discussion. 4 days ago, Joe Biden says that he would bring back the individual mandate. So with that court, so even if Joe Biden were to win, and even if Joe Biden was to come back and try to do this, that Texas judge, as long as it does get supported by this appeals court, and if it goes up to the Supreme Court, gets emboldened once again, Joe Biden still will not be able to actually do that. So Joe Biden wants to tax you. He wants to raise your taxes. He wants to control your life, and he wants to make sure that anything and everything that he does costs you a crap ton more money and destroys your way of life. But with that, guys, I think I'm going to wrap up the show tonight. I appreciate you all for being here. It's Friday night, which means don't drink and drive, but ride with those who do. You have family and friends who care about you and love you deeply. They want you to get back home safely, so you can start this whole week over on Monday with me, Mr. Murica, the Bearded Truth. Real quick, before I do wrap up, I would be remiss by not talking about this. Last night, Thursday night, Matt Wright on the writer's block had Kim Ruff. That's right, a presidential candidate for 2020. Matt Wright had on the show and had a fantastic interview with her. So make sure you guys go back and tune into that for sure. But with that, guys, I will see you guys on Monday. I'll start off the week, and we'll continue on with Muddied Waters of Freedom, My Fellow Americans, and then the writer's block once again. And I'll finish off the week on Friday once more. So with that, don't drink and drive or ride with those who do. You have family and friends who care about you and love you deeply, and they want you to stay safe. So see you guys later. I'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Be good.